This is Miracle Healings, and I am Leslie Williams. And if you ever went through a deep trauma, or if you know someone that had lived a trauma, is a child trauma or any kind of abuse, domestic violence, and emotion, physical and spiritual trauma, mental trauma, today's show, it is for you. Because I have with me a survivor that was able to transform trauma into healing. Melissa Concessio, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Leslie.
Yes, I'm very happy to have you on the show because your story, it's unbelievable. It's incredible. I think it is important to touch in the subject because there's a lot of us who have a trauma in our lives, or even if we don't live it personally, we might know someone and we want to help someone. And your story, it's so inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
Leslie.
So, can you take us to where it started?
Yeah, sure. I guess it started since birth, right? You're just born into circumstances sometimes that are not perfect. But over time, I think you learn to deal with it. So I was born in, I'd still call it a beautiful family because it was, into a beautiful family as the fourth child. And my dad, he'd spend his time having a lot of parties, being an amazing person, but also having very difficult moments, I think, with himself that he brought home. And in those times, there would be a lot of domestic violence in our household, long story short. But we as children, and my mother as well, had to deal with circumstances that came our way and deal with it in the best way possible and heal from it. And that's a nutshell of what the story is. And I'm happy to go in deeper, when we get there.
Yeah. So, do how this unfold? So, you in
Hmm.
your life, you were in an environment
Hmm.
with brothers and sisters.
Yes. Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and how that unfold with you.
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk about my one of my first childhood memories,
Mhm.
which was walking through the living room and seeing blood on the floor and wondering what had happened. And it was an attack with an iron. And I could hear the sirens go loud, and the police had walked in, the ambulance had walked in. And I remember standing there helpless as a child, not knowing what happened or what to do. When the ambulance came in, they asked the question, "What happened?" Um, and the answer was, "I slipped and fell." But we all know that that's not true. But women, a lot of the times, cover things up, maybe for their spouses, and children, a lot of the times, maybe cover things up that go on in their household, maybe for protection of themselves and the shame of
Yeah,
going through abuse. So,
yeah.
yeah, I found it beyond liberating as an adult, even though I went through all of this, to actually write about it and share the story and share the message because I know that I'm not the only one.
Hmm. And it was writing a
Hmm.
process for you of healing.
Yes, yes. So actually, there's a lot of research along the lines of writing and how it heals you, because what
Hmm.
writing does is it objectifies your feelings and your emotions, the pain in your heart. When you write it down, firstly, it's a release, and
Yes.
secondly, when
Yeah.
you read what you've written, it's an objective view of your own soul, and that's what gives you, I think, the power to heal.
Yeah. So did you ever journaling and you have
Yes.
journal?
Yeah. So I obviously, when I was four and in the younger years, I didn't
Mhm.
start journaling until I was about seven. And when I look back at that journal, the English wasn't perfect, and the way I had written it wasn't perfect. But what's important is I had transformed those memories into moments where I would overcome things just by journaling. So as soon as I could write, I could transform my emotions into helping me become a better person.
Yeah, and it's incredible that you started to write as a child. So
Yeah.
and with 7 years old, usually after 7 years old, we are not navigating in theta anymore, because from 0 to 7, our brains
hmm
operate in theta state.
Yeah.
So we are
Yeah.
just downloading information
hmm
from the environment. So what
Yeah.
happens, it's incredible. After with 7 years old, you start to write. And even if you
hmm
were a child, your consciousness was starting to develop. And then
hmm
here you go, the process of healing started slightly, right?
Yes, yes. Every day and every moment. And it doesn't mean that, if you didn't start writing as a child, that you cannot begin today. You can grow and you can start writing and you can start the healing process at any point in your life. And
Yes.
even though I did write as a child, I found that as an adult, when I look back at the notes and when I rewrote, because I still remembered some of those stories, when I rewrote it as an adult, that was another layer of healing. So the more you write, the more you heal.
Exactly, exactly. That's such a beautiful um, thing to have, to be able to read, right, what you wrote back in the day. And as you
Yeah.
said, and maybe um, with a new perspective, because we
Yes.
are, as we grow and we experience life, and if we take the difficulties that we are going through, or we went through, with
hmm
as something for us to grow, right? You have a different eyes and a different perspective, and I think that's kind of what you did, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And how is the how were the feelings back in the day? Can you talk about a little
hmm
bit about the feelings related to the trauma, and what you realize in yourself?
hmm
What was the biggest things that you need to heal from that?
Yeah. So, I believe that there's a fine line between self-love, self-compassion, and the other side, which is self-pity. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of us, when we experience very difficult moments or we go through suffering, we sometimes don't have any self-compassion, but sometimes we get to the level where we do have some. And sometimes, unfortunately, we also get to the level where we have self-pity. And when I was in that place, it led to a lot of internal and external sadness. I would project everything I felt inside on the outside world. I would feel sorry for myself, feel like the world was against me. I would ask the question, why me? Why did this happen to me? But there's a flip side. There always is, if you look for it. And the flip side for me was when I asked the question, why not me? And that moment came to me in a very, very powerful state when, our family had lost everything. So my dad was doing really well when he was younger.
Mhm.
And I write about it in my book, right? He was doing so well. And all of a sudden, he had lost everything overnight. He had lost his business. We were living in Abu Dhabi at the time. And we left to Mumbai, India, overnight, just with a suitcase. And at that point, things got a lot worse for us, and we were moving into a one-bedroom apartment with the six of us. And it was the most difficult moment in our lives where, we're sleeping on the floor every day, and I was feeling sorry for myself. But when I actually went downstairs in Mumbai and I went outside and I saw that there were people sleeping on the street, there were people living in a small concrete apartment. There was a girl specifically that I saw who was a child, the same age as me, who was pregnant. And it just hit me in that moment. I need to stop feeling sorry for myself. And that's when I can help others. Because if I'm stuck in the sorry zone, I'm stuck in the sadness zone. I'm not stuck in the zone of what I want to be, which is hope, which is healing for somebody else. My whole perspective in life changed. I started to work hard towards my grades. It didn't matter what the circumstances were. It mattered. The only thing that mattered was my response.
Right.
So I started studying. I started doing all the right things. I started to build my own life up. And in the process, now, and it takes you many years to heal, you start
Right.
to help others. And that's when your heart gets full of joy and full of
Mhm.
hope for others that you can help them. And then I go back to that question, why not me? Because I'm here
Right.
to help you. Because I went through all of that. Because I have a purpose now that's made for me to be there for you.
Mhm. How old were you when you experienced that scene with the little
Sure.
girl?
I was around 15 at the time.
15. So she
Yeah.
was a teenager.
Yeah, she was a teenager. I couldn't really tell what exactly her age was, but
Right.
she was a teenager. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still a
It,
child. Yeah.
right. And you were
Yeah.
a teenager, but what we know about life when we are
Hmm.
15, what I think it's incredible, it's what you said. So basically, it was a breakthrough in your life
Hmm.
from reality,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
were confronted with a reality that was harder than yours in your
Hmm.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
And how beautiful it is, the this force that we have inside, that at
Hmm.
that moment we're 15 years old going through difficult times, you were able to start to turn the game around, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll make this very relatable, because I understand that not everybody's been through, that amount of abuse or trauma or, domestic violence, but you have your own things that you've been through. But even if you haven't, it's important to remember that 80% of the world lives under the poverty line according to the World Bank, and they live under $10 a day. And if they do, it means that you're the top 1% in the world.
Yes. And a lot of these beautiful people are able to smile, right? To
Yes,
live in
yes,
these conditions and
yes,
smile and give us life
yes.
lessons. And one of the things that I think, one of the elements that made these beautiful people being able to live in these circumstances and smile and have
Hmm.
joy, it's because they live in the moment, it's because they are
Hmm.
present, it's because they are with themselves, right? They don't have all the media around, or all the business and all the craziness and all the focus that we have to have outside, and then some of them are able to be happy, and
Absolutely.
it's incredible, it's incredible. So after you had that realization and you saw the girl,
Hmm.
um how that, so you shifted, say, okay,
Yeah,
you said, okay, it's me, it happened to me.
yeah,
So, and then
yeah,
what starts to happen inside of you?
yeah, sure. So I decide that, something I really want to do is pursue higher education. At that time, I was, yeah, one of the only ones who would go for higher education, especially doing that abroad where I could pay for myself and pay my own way.
Right.
So what I decided to do was to move to Australia as a teenager by myself. And if you ask anyone who's been in a situation where they're underage, firstly, they have to work towards studying. They have to figure out how they're going to get themselves out of the circumstances. And they're going to leave everything that they know behind and move to a place where they don't know a single soul. that's hard to do. But you find it within yourself to first lift yourself up so you can lift others up. And that for me was education.
And
So
you took a risk, right?
yeah,
At
yes,
that
yes.
such a young age. And I think being able to take risks is one of the most beautiful ways for us to find healing, to grow, to learn, right? I did it too. I was very young when I left. I'm Brazilian when I left Brazil, and put a backpack and went on my own as well. So I resonate with that. But how was that moment, and what that moment taught you? Taking the risk, moving after deciding, okay, I want to invest in my knowledge, and this risk moment. How that happened, how it was.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it didn't happen instantly. And that's the other thing about persistence and commitment and gratification. I still had to complete I had not even completed my 10th grade by then. So I still had to complete school, which, my parents were all for, to give them a lot of credit. They also helped me get into 11th, 12th grade that I did there happily. And after the fact, I was like, okay, how do I move? What do I need to do? Some of my friends who were moving abroad, they did their SATs to move to the States. And that's an entrance exam that you need to move to the States. And I did mine and I did well. Although I'd never done a reasoning test in my life, I stayed up late nights, I did the lot. And then I looked at the fees. And I'm like, I cannot afford this. And, no one would even give me a loan. I barely had a proper job. And my sister at the time, I asked my parents, and they had said no, they were unable to support me to try to, go abroad to study. So I asked my sister at the time, and my sister, without hesitation, she said yes. She said, I will support you. And I said back to her, look, this is only to show, the Australian government that I'm capable of paying it and you will back me up. But I want you to know that as soon as I go there, I will take care of myself. And I kept my word. So she helped me move here by showing assets because you have to. And I moved to Australia by myself, and I worked around the clock. I studied around the clock. And I had my entire education paid off by the time I had finished university. I only took university fees from her for the first semester. And after that, I worked and I paid it off as we went up front. And, that's what I had to do. And
So
it got done.
That's wonderful. Wow, it's definitely very inspiring. How all that happened. So you have all this fuel. What do you consider that was the fuel that you have inside of you to come from a situation that you were in extremely challenging and difficulty back in Mumbai, and then have this fuel inside? What was that? Just so our listeners can understand the magic behind it.
Yeah. And I love that you've asked this question, Leslie, because I really want to impart what I was thinking at the time and what I'm thinking now and how I do everything. The starting point of anything is imagination, it's visualization, it's belief in your better future. It starts with belief in yourself that, hey, you can do this no matter what. You'll find a way no matter what. And you have the ambition within you to start visualizing that future. You go so far in visualizing that future, and a lot of people do it in different ways. You could do it with meditation, or you could do it by simply thinking about where you want to be in the next 10 years, for example, or 5 years, and you visualize yourself in that position until you truly become that person.
So
So
that's
you're
what you were
operating.
doing
Yeah,
to yourself?
yeah,
Imagine
yeah. I would
yourself in
imagine every
Australia?
day. Yeah,
Yay!
yeah,
And how was, so you were imagine and the feelings?
yeah.
What about the
Yeah, yeah.
feelings?
So the
You
feelings, yeah, sure. So if I tell you, right, to do this right now, and we'll do a practical exercise because it shows humans, when you do something, you remember it more. So let's do a practical exercise.
okay.
Imagine your greatest moment that you've ever had where you accomplished something that you didn't think you could do, right? Now, with that feeling, imagine something in the future that you want to do. Take in a deep breath and believe that you're there. Because if you've done it in the past, you can do it in your future. Open your eyes and you have the biggest smile on your face, Rachel, because you know,
Yes,
right? So that's visualization in a very,
yes.
very simple step.
And it does work. You were telling me, and I was remembering that when I decided to leave Brazil, and I just told a friend, I'm going to Ireland. And I was seeing myself. I was seeing myself walking the street. That's exactly what you said. And
Yeah.
3 months later, there I was. And
Mm-hmm.
another element that I think it's so important is that when we do this exercise, and as you just did right now, we close our eyes. But even if
Mm-hmm.
we are not doing a specific what you just asked me to do, but
Yeah.
imagining we are closing
Yes.
our senses to the world outside, completely in connection with
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, and you are the evidence on how this works so
Yep.
well,
Yep.
because you can have the biggest adversity in the world
Mm-hmm.
right in front of you
Mm-hmm.
as you did, and then you can
Mm-hmm.
make it happen. Wonderful,
Absolutely.
wonderful. I love that. And what else were you doing apart of visualizations, anything else that you in this
Yeah,
process?
sure. Yeah. So I have two sides of me. One
Mhm.
side is that creative, spiritual side, right? Which everybody has within them. And the second side is that pragmatic side where you still got to get things done. Because
Yeah.
if you only have one side, you don't get anywhere. You need to have both to come together for you to have lasting success. And the second side of that I'm talking so deeply about is action. Even if it's a
Mhm.
small step that you can take, do it.
Right.
It starts with a plan and it starts with a breakdown of what you can do. And believe that you learn along the way to know exactly what action steps you need to take, but you start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Have
that's
that
that's
plan,
what you were doing.
and like a little bit. Yeah, so I had action steps, I had plans. So, for example, for me at the time, I had to find out, okay, so which universities am I going to look at? So I started looking at brochures of universities. Where am I going to go? What percentage I need to get into this top university? What, visa conditions I have. Like, that's why I asked my sister the question to fund me as well, because I knew and I had found out that I needed funding and I needed to show assets to the Australian government. What was the visa process? Now, this is all stuff that we don't enjoy doing sometimes, but
Right.
it's mandatory. It's
Yes.
mandatory to get you there.
Yeah. And
So I did all of those things, which have, yeah. Mm,
one thing that I want to touch, because this is such a nice subject, step by step,
mhm,
right? Small things at a time. Um, what
mhm,
would you tell to someone who has a block that that it's
Sure.
now wants to take steps, but somehow this person is stuck.
Yeah.
What would you tell
Yeah.
them?
Okay. If I knew exactly what was stuck within you, I could be more specific about helping you with that. But let's take an example.
Mm-hmm.
So say, for example, it's fear. Okay. Fear. Fear is a very good one. Because I'm facing something that I'm doing right now, which is fear all over again. Okay. So fear
Mm-hmm.
really doesn't go away. Even when you are, you've done, say, for example, public speaking before, you've done speeches on stages before. Every time you go on stage, it's still scary. You
Mm-hmm.
have a fear of rejection, for example, that somebody's going to tell you, hey, you aren't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
You're not good enough to do it. So how do you overcome that?
Mm-hmm.
What I want you to know is this. Other people who have fear are not born fearless. It is a common myth that people are born fearless.
Mm-hmm.
They have the fear and they choose to do it against that fear to overcome what they need to do. So, what I'm saying is, if you're feeling like you have a block, and if
Mm-hmm.
you take a small action step towards
Mm-hmm.
getting rid of that block, you don't have to take a huge step. Don't go from 0 to 100, go from 0 to
Right.
5%. Take that small action step and keep going, keep going, keep going. Eventually, you'll find that you've overcome the block just because of your courage.
Yes, exactly. And fear is such a it is so strong. Fear
Mm-hmm.
is a feeling that it gives, it's a base for some other stuff, a lot of things that we have. And I think what you just said is so important, because sometimes when we are living situations of fear, anxiety comes up,
Oh, yes,
and
yes,
then the mind goes
yes,
right,
yes,
and
yes,
then we are unable to do what you just said. But
yes,
what you
yes,
just said is so important. Breathe, take a small step, don't
yeah,
don't put a lot
yeah,
of pressure, right?
yes, 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 yes. And you
Yeah.
know what? Maybe I'll help you with a story just for a metaphorical view on how I face some of my fears. Okay. So
Yeah.
when I was younger, I didn't play any sport, zero. And I had almost drowned as a child, which is also in my book, the story about almost drowning. I jumped from a diving board and I plunged into the deep end, and I took in so much water. And the same sister who had helped me move to Australia was the one who actually saved me that day when I was unconscious. And I had this inborn fear of water as an adult. Obviously, I've been through this traumatic event as a child, right? And a lot of us have that. Some traumatic event and sometimes you don't even know that this exists within you until you dig in deeper. That why am
Exactly.
I so scared of that? Well, something happened to me that made me scared of that. Right. So when I felt that fear, I'm like, I live in Australia. We're on an island. I really need to know how to swim. So how do I overcome this fear? Again, the small steps. So the small steps I did. Okay, what is the first thing I can do? I can learn the skills and the techniques that it takes, right? So what are the techniques? I went to, adult swimming classes yeah, and it
Mm.
was embarrassing. I was wearing this green outfit. I looked like a struggling frog underwater. you know, Everybody else was a child on the other side, and I was this adult learning how to swim. But it didn't matter all of that. What mattered was I had to get over this fear because that was
Right.
my ambition. That was my goal.
Right.
So even though it was embarrassing at the time, and that will happen to you when you need to overcome things, there will be a lot of resistance, but
Yes.
you choose to take that small step anyway.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, so now what can I do? Okay, I'm not that scared of being in the water. What else can I do? I can swim a lap in supervision. Now what else can I do? I can swim multiple laps. Now what else can I do? I can swim an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Now what else can I do?
Mhm.
I can jump off a boat in the middle of the Sydney Ocean and swim to a beach. And I did that. I did all of these things
Woo!
over a period of 2 years. And you can do it too. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what your fear is. Those small steps, that feeling in your heart, that ambition will get you there.
Yeah, I think one thing that it calls my attention in your story, and I want to again bring it because it's so strong and it will help our viewers, is the fact that how you switch your
Mm,
focus inside again. So this example
mm,
of the water is what you did. Even if you
mm,
were there in a situation of that you put yourself in the pool with
mm,
fear, and even if you have kids around, and you were maybe the only adult, you
mhm,
focus yourself in yourself. And that's
mhm,
again how we are capable to do extraordinary things when we
mhm,
just shift our attention. And you, since you were a little girl, you start to do that. So that is a very good example of a healing process that works so well.
absolutely. And what I'd say to add to that is taking a calculated risk is very
Mm-hmm.
different to taking an uncalculated, because that's my pragmatic side now coming in. Because when you take a calculated risk, like for example, swimming in supervision, right? Whatever, having that safe environment to fail, you know that somebody's there to bring you out. So
Right.
if you have the small, safe environments that you create for yourself, it gives you the ability to build more courage over time to do the big things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and again, putting together this step by step, because
Mm,
I think what you said is so important.
mm,
Because when we go up like
mm,
there, okay, I want to
mm,
reach
mm,
that,
mm.
and then when if we fail,
Yeah,
oh, then it's a drama. But
yeah,
as you
yeah,
said, these small steps also allow us to understand that fail is so important, that we should
yeah.
be grateful, because a wonderful way to learn, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And I say it all the time, failure is just a data point. It is just data that you can
Mhm.
take within you, and it's up to you of whether you take that data and you go, okay, I can learn from this, or you take that data and say to yourself, this is going to destroy me. Let me take this data and destroy me. And if you think about it practically, you're like, I would never let a data point destroy me. It's just something that happened. But emotionally, it's very different because you think of yourself as, a failure. And that's not
Mhm.
true, because it's just an event, it's just a data point. And you can look at it and go, I can learn. And now I'm better because of that learning.
Yes, exactly. That thought is, it's unreal, as as you were mentioning. What if you think, oh, I am a failure?
Mm.
It's not real. It's
No,
unreal,
it's not.
right?
That's your
Uh,
emotional representation of
yes,
what happened.
exactly,
Not real life.
exactly,
Nobody else thinks that. Yeah.
exactly. So that's another wonderful way to learn,
Hmm.
to grow, to overcome things. And what about fate? Did you have in all this process anything that you believe, that you follow within yourself, that support
Yeah.
you in your healing process?
Yes. So I'm going to talk about this because sometimes there's things you cannot control in your environment. So the only thing you can control is you, and everybody knows that. But there's some things you cannot control, and I want people to know what to do with things you cannot control. So when I was younger, I had this jaundice episode. So have you heard of jaundice? It's a waterborne disease that you can get, uh, like yeah, like yellow fever. It's called. And
Mm,
if you have food, say on eateries at the side of the road, you can have this severe case.
right.
What happened to my brother at the time? He ate on the street somewhere. He got very sick. He went into hospital. And while he was in hospital, he was bitten by mosquitoes, because you'd think hospitals are a sanitary environment, but not,
Right.
not where we were. And I was sick. I was weak, as soon as he went to hospital. And they were wondering, what's happening with me. I went to the doctor and he said, oh, you might have something similar.
Mm-hmm.
right? You might have something similar. And I was so upset. That was something I could not control, right? Something had already happened. And although it was temporary, it meant to me at the time as a child that I would have to go to hospital, and I didn't want to be away from my mother. And, I'm like, what am I going to do? And I ran into the room, and it was, this monsoon season in Mumbai where it just rained heavily. And I was there lying on the bed, as a child in child's pose, just trying to hug myself,
Mm.
crying like the monsoon rains, thinking I cannot control anything. But I suddenly felt that somehow I was going to be saved from going to hospital. I just had this belief, you know, belief beyond what was real. And
Right.
it's hard to do. Sometimes you have to cry to do that. Sometimes you have to really be really true to yourself, to ask yourself the
Yeah.
question, okay, I cannot control this. So I've got to put my
Right.
trust in the universe. I've got to put my trust, whatever you believe in, God, universe, you got to put your trust that you're going to be okay. The
So
doctor had called
we,
my mother. She came into
uh-huh.
the room and she told me that, hey, you just have a mild case. It's just monitoring at home. And I couldn't have
So,
controlled that.
so that feeling that you had was
Yeah,
a connection to something, was
yeah,
mhm,
yeah,
beautiful. It's the trust, because
yeah,
faith leads to
yeah,
trust, right? So the
yeah,
you knew, it's like
yeah,
we know that the unknown.
yeah,
You
yeah,
knew, you
exactly.
knew, you
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it.
But you know what? I want to say something else. Even if I had to go to hospital, I know that I can cope with it. And that's an important thing to know. That no matter what, you're going to be okay because you have the capability within yourself to cope with it. I think if you know that, it's beyond belief. No matter what happens, you've got your own back.
Hmm. So after you had that beautiful moment,
Hmm.
did you start to follow anything, or do you meditate, do you, prayer,
Yeah,
whatever, how that process
yeah.
happens with you?
Yeah, so I think when you're Indian, sometimes the meditation becomes inborn because it's so prevalent in society that it's great. So
Hmm.
the visualizations for me started off very, very early. I used to do visualizations, but after that moment, I think the biggest thing that changed in my life is belief. And that belief comes in many, many different forms. It doesn't have to be just through religion. It doesn't have to be just through the
Right.
universe. It could be from somebody like Steve Jobs or hearing a quote. And
Hmm.
I'll tell you why. Okay. So Steve Jobs gave this graduation speech where he says, you never know how the dots will connect. Whatever you believe in, karma, the future, but somehow they will connect in your future. And at the time, it's difficult to know why is this happening to you. But maybe it's connected all the way to today for me to tell you this message. You don't know how the dots connect. So let it
Yeah.
connect and surrender in things that you cannot control.
Yes, that's so important. Just be okay, just surrender, just let go.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Yes,
cannot control it
yes.
anyway. What's the point of
Yeah,
worrying about it?
exactly.
Yeah.
And drive ourselves crazy. And then there's,
Yeah.
putting the energy towards something that you
Exactly.
cannot control. It's not
Yeah.
going to do anything but drag energy from us, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So I'm very curious about your book.
Yes. Sure, sure.
After all this story and all this experience, um, your book was born, and I really would like to know what it's about. Oh, there you go. It's beautiful. So, can you tell us a little bit about
Yeah.
your book?
Yeah, sure. So, this is the name of my book. It's called Go Find Yourself. And it's about my own brutal life lessons to stop fighting yourself and start loving your life. So, all of the emotional things that we've talked about in terms of healing, it's all in there, but I've added another layer. Not only have I covered the emotional side of the story, but a pragmatic approach to how within science you can help yourself, things that are validated, proven through science, and then by self-experimentation by me. Because I don't like to preach anything I haven't tried. I really don't. I feel like,
Right.
yeah, that's, how can I say something if I haven't done it? So when I have overcome certain things, I've gone through it, and it took me a while to try to, fit in the exact connection and find the research that backs what I'm saying. So every chapter, it starts with a story. For example, I'll tell you some of the names. Never give up, even if your shorts get soaked. So that's about a story when my shorts had fallen through into the bathroom, into the bathroom toilet, and and I couldn't attend practice. But I had given up too early at that time, and it was a mistake, right? And that was a learning data point for me, to tell myself that if I try again, which is the lesson, if I, trusting that if you try again and you are a superhero who's still in the phase of discovering your powers, you'll never feel like you couldn't do something, because you're a superhero and you just got your powers. So even if your shorts get soaked or your superhero outfit has fallen in the toilet, it's fine. You're still figuring it out, and you will grow, and you'll grow to the right level when the time's right. So that's one. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of chapters in here. Something that resonated really well was wear your confidence to combat unkind bullshit. I'm very honest and real, and it's about finding your confidence no matter what, that chapter. And maybe I'll read just a few sentences so you know how I started off. I cannot remember if I started off being a happy person. The few photos we've got left never showed me smiling as a kid, but I remember this one smile in this gorgeous red dress. And that's about when I went to a party. And in the party, my friend's father had been very rude to me. So it's not just, at home, sometimes outside. And I couldn't control the situation. But that red dress, it made me feel so good from the inside out that it didn't matter what he said. I had taken it straight away. It had deflected me, and it didn't matter. I didn't even feel anger towards him. And that's what happens when you are in your element and you focus on the positive and you fill your brain with as many positive thoughts and you focus on your healing. What other people say doesn't matter, even if it's unkind.
Exactly. And people have a tendency to do the opposite, to focus on what the man told you. Right? I was rude at you and worry about that. But again, how wonderful it is when we are, as you said, aligned within ourselves. It's so beautiful. What was your biggest life lesson after all that?
Oh my goodness. That is really difficult, for me to choose, because I feel like all of them have been instrumental.
Right.
And I'm thinking which one.
Or if you want to share more than one, go ahead.
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's my book, but I'd say there's so much good stuff in here. Okay. I would say the most important thing. Okay, this one. You can write your own future. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Finding your future, and this is a concept that I came up with. It's called magic action. When you stop looking for magic pills to solve all of your problems, and you make a choice to take consistent positive action instead, that's when you win.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, you would have something to live for, right?
Yeah. And I can read a quote by Roy T. Bennett. I call him my long lost writing soulmate who doesn't know I exist. Okay. He says, don't just learn, experience. Don't just read, absorb. Don't just change, transform. Don't just really advocate. Don't just promise, prove. Don't just criticize, encourage. Don't just think, ponder. Don't just take, give. Don't just dream, do. Don't just hear, listen. Don't just tell, show. And don't just exist. You better live.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow, Melissa, I could spend the whole night with you. So much. Yeah, but you are a coach as well, right?
Yes, yes, I am. Yes. So, what I mainly coach people on is
Mhm.
helping them, firstly, deal with all of the problems in their life to have a real ambition to reach their goals. And the things that other people have done is phenomenal after our coaching sessions. People have written books, they've
Mhm.
gone on stage and told their story, they've shared their true stories with the world, they've been on camera, they've been able to deal with things that they never thought was possible because A, they went through the healing process, B, they took action, and C, they started to live the most amazing life that were always within them. That's what I coach people on.
Wow, I am empowered now. Just listen to you. That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much for being the show today, Melissa. Is there a message that you'd like to leave to our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, sure. A final message from me. You've really got to, I'll say the title, and there's a reason why. You've really got to go find yourself because
Mhm.
it all starts from within you. I'm here to support you. Leslie's here to support you. But everything you want to do starts from within. So start there, and we'll see you on the other side.
Ah, that's beautiful. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to share your story in the show and all your wisdom. And thank you so much for your beautiful enlightenment today with us.
Thank you, Leslie.
And after all that, would you say that life is beautiful?
Oh my God, it's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
It
it's
is.
really
It
good.
is.
Hmm.
Thank you, Melissa. Miracle Healings can be found at www.theselfartist.com on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Look for Self Odyssey. And if you like to share your story with me, or if you know someone that has a healing story, please get in touch with me via Leslie Williams at theselfartist.com. Thank you for watching. And don't forget, life is beautiful.